welcome back to the Growing Together podcast with me, Sonny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
A podcast where we talk about everything under the sun related to growth and becoming the very best version of yourself. We are back with another episode. I'm so excited, as I always am. We didn't share an episode last week just because I feel like it's been kind of chaotic since we moved here. A lot of things to do and quite exhausting.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we literally just went right into it. Once we got here, we started moving things, unloading the U-Haul, getting this set that we have. As you see now, we kind of switched it around.
And it's not even like what's going to be like the final result.
Aesthetically pleasing and just topics.
Yeah, this isn't even going to be where we film
in
a month or so because I'm trying to set that up and yeah, it's one of those things where I love recording the podcast, but I'm also someone that wants it to be exactly the way I want it. And now, we're working towards getting some of the stuff and that we want for our set, like a couch on the other side of our apartment to kind of have our own little dedicated recording space. So, yeah. So we're kind of just very busy and that nature, and work, I feel like, has been really crazy for both of us.
Yeah, especially for you too,
Yeah. I mean, but
yeah.
for you too.
But yeah, too. Yeah, me too. But I mean, for you, I feel like there's been a lot of you've been going through a lot of changes at your job over the past month. So a lot more work for you and everyone else involved. So
yeah, I don't think it was that much more work. I mean, I was already doing
you're already doing a lot of it. But yeah, anyways.
So I just think it's my normal to have a lot to do, and I mean, you never get bored, so I guess that's a good thing. But that does relate back to what I want to talk about today and kind of discuss what it's like to navigate the workplace and career growth in your 20s. And I think we both have very different insight because you're almost out of your 20s and I'm my mid-20s, and my career, I think, is definitely not what I thought it'd be. And not in a bad way. I just think the path I've taken is not traditional either, and I think the path you've taken hasn't been very traditional. So I think we both have some equally interesting insight to share.
Yeah.
Not to say that we know everything about the subject, because
of course not.
We don't, but I think our experience might help some people out, and we can just discuss it. So I kind of have this broken up into a couple different sections, and this first one really relates to me of being the young one in the office. I have a love-hate relationship with being a young adult.
I mean, why is that?
Because I feel like people, when you're young, when you're the youngest one in the room, or the youngest one in the crowd, or the youngest one in the workplace, it might just be an insecurity of mine, but I feel like people don't think you know anything. And I don't say, I don't experience that currently at my workplace, but I have experienced that in other places where it just felt like I'm just this, fetus that doesn't know anything. But, you always have a lot to learn no matter how old you are. But I feel like it's I don't know, it's difficult. You never felt like that no matter where you were, when you were very, early in your 20s, that,
Yeah. I mean, I would say, the first job that I ever had was a warehouse job. And I in that industry, I was the youngest. Everyone else in that place was, over 30, I'd imagine. Maybe somebody else was probably in their mid-20s. Mm-hmm. So I did get picked on for being young and all these other things that related to that job. So
yeah.
Obviously, experience-wise, it was my first job. I had no experience in warehouse. I quickly learned how difficult it is. It's pretty difficult.
How long did you stay there?
I think it was a temp agency that placed me there, so I was there for 3 months.
3 months? That's nothing.
Yeah, I mean, they ended up. So long story short,
Did you get fired?
No, I didn't. That's what's funny about it. So these temp agencies only hire people for. It was seasonal.
Oh,
yeah.
Temp. I mean, that's stuff.
Yeah.
That's the meaning of temp.
Yeah. Duh.
Well, some temp agencies, I think my mom, when she's looked for a job through those before, some of them it's temporary unless they might actually bring you on full time based on how you perform,
or if they need you to,
but it's never guaranteed.
Yeah
The reason I also thought of this is because I worked at Target, as anyone who listens to this podcast probably knows by now. I worked at Target for 3 years, and when I got promoted into a leadership position pretty soon, I was a closing team lead by my 8th month there. Like, so I started as a team member and then got promoted to a closing team lead, and that's where I was for like the remaining like 2.5 years that I worked there.
Oh, wow.
And, being like young and wanting to prove yourself, you always have new ideas and new ways to do things. And, you want to make your mark. And getting the older crowd who had been there for years and like, has seniority, they're always the ones that are like, well, we've always done it this way. We've always done it this way. So why are we going to change it? Or like just looking down at you because like, what could you possibly know at your mere age of like, I was 20 when I was working at Target. And like, what could you possibly know at 20 that I don't know in like my 40 or 50 years, It's such a bad, not even bad, doesn't even describe it. It's not a great mindset to have, like to think that you don't have something to learn from everyone, no matter their age. I think I've learned so much from people that are younger than me, people that are older than me, and I think that in my head probably I play more into the fact that age impacts so many things when it really doesn't, but I have felt insecure being young and wondering whether I have enough to bring to the table or like if I really can have as much of an impact given that I've only been on this earth for 25 years.
I mean, I feel like a lot of us have probably felt that way, especially when it comes to, again, you being a young person or it being your first job, right? But there is a lot of, standard operating procedures that businesses and companies and, places that have been around for a long time have. So I would say that those are probably the most difficult places to, like, have someone else tell you have someone else tell you how to do something else if it's always been done a certain way.
There's a difference between like a standard operating procedure and like things that can be changed in the company.
Yeah.
Like this is not saying you're wanting to change like the way that you operate. It's just saying like maybe do this one thing differently. Like for instance, if you work in marketing and marketing has changed so much in like the last 10 years even, and someone who's maybe worked in marketing since the early 2000s, they might have a different look into like what marketing should be versus like someone coming into it now will have a lot of new ideas based on like what they've seen like works. And sometimes there's like it's hard for people who have also been doing the job to kind of who have been doing the job for a long time to get on board with like the new technology or new like ways of doing things or new ways of marketing. And it's funny that like I don't know, it's funny that happens too. Like,
I mean, there's a lot of industries that have seen a drastic a level of change within the past 5 or 10 years. Technology just not quite outright eliminating some jobs, or having technology that helps people advance and do things a lot more efficiently. So it doesn't take like 5 people to do one thing, or it doesn't take 5 people anymore to do this one thing. It's only like one person, like plus a tool.
I think those are far and few between though. I don't think that that's like happening like everywhere. I think that like there's still a huge need for like actual people and like also like setting like actual, this is like besides the point, but setting expectations of like what does like how many people should this take, like because some people will like, I don't know, I've seen job descriptions where like the job description goes on and on of like your list of responsibilities, and sometimes like I'm not a lazy person by far, and like I'm willing to like get the job done. I have more grit than most people out there, but I look at some job descriptions sometimes and I'm like, how could you possibly expect one person to do this? Like, you're looking for this one person to be your entire team, and that's not realistic. And, like, getting people to see that, too, and then, like, it's kind of difficult. But I also think about it in the sense of, like, when you're young in the workplace, or, like, if you're young and trying to start out your career, I always question, how much does experience actually matter? And can you actually just get by with, like, determination and an insane amount of grit? Because a lot of things can be taught. Like, if you find the right person, the right talent, you can teach them what they need to know,
Yeah, especially at a young age. Someone who's willing to learn everything, I felt like that's probably one of the things that I do remember the most is when you're like at a young age, you're wanting to learn all these things that may help you in your field or that career path that you envision yourself being in, and you pick up a lot of general ideas and certain types of niche things that you feel like would impact your career in the future. And I think it's helpful. I think you can obviously learn these things. Someone can teach you. In this case, getting hired onto a company that can have someone like you, for example, like where you work, you're training people to do a certain test that you learned not too long ago, or actually not too long ago, I wouldn't say, but just doing like the reporting and all these things. So there's ways for people that don't know what they're doing, but have some sort of like passion to learning things that they might have not wanted to learn before, never thought of actually wanting to like actually dabble in.
No, the thing is, I wouldn't I'm talking about like someone that does have, like, for instance, has shown the interest in actually learning something, but doesn't have the professional experience. Like, the thing is, like, I'm thinking if you're looking for a job, the first thing you want to do is to have something on paper that shows like your interest, and not just shows your interest, but shows that like you've taken actionable steps towards that. And it doesn't have to be professional experience. It can be like an online course or your own personal project, like a passion project. Because, for instance, I've been doing some hiring for like my company, and my biggest thing is that this role that I'm hiring for can be taught. Like, and it's great to have experience. Like, I do love that some people come in and have the experience or the background that will help them be successful in the role. But at the end of the day, you're also looking for the person that has the right attitude, that has like that determination and grit that I was talking about.
Yeah.
Because the rest can be taught. I always like to say that, companies will always be able to find someone that can do the job. But it's even more important that you find someone that's like, has that right attitude and has what you're looking for overall as like a candidate, and someone, specifically for our company, we value people that, want to learn and like want to grow and are passionate about that, because that's what moves you, not just you forward personally, but will move our business forward too. Yeah, I'm really passionate about that, because I think about where like I would have been if like my company didn't take a chance on me, like I had background, like I had done courses in SEO, and I had the interest and the passion, and I showed that like with my interview and like what was on my resume. I think honestly, like when I think about how we're doing the hiring process now, what got me the job was my grit and like my attitude towards wanting to be great at what I do. And I think that that's so important, and like it's often discredited, and like because a lot of people do want, when you're hiring for roles, they want someone who's experienced, because the investment you might have to put in that person is lower up front, because you don't have to teach them these things, because teaching does take time, and it's like, time is money is power is pizza, like that kind of thing. But so I understand it, but I also think like with more people, like I feel like more people who are like younger, like for me in instance, or like even millennials, they go about hiring a different way. I've listened to podcasts where like the person who works at a company as like a hiring manager telling like what they look for, and a lot of times it's not that education anymore. It's not that you went to college, or it's not that internship or professional experience. It's like what are you going to bring to our team that is going to move us forward, and what is it like, how can you demonstrate that other than just your skills? Again, because skills can be taught. Like, if you can have the wrong person with the right skills,
Yeah, no, definitely. You definitely can.
So,
yeah.
I think that's an important, like, conversation, too, is, like, when is experience actually necessary? I do think, obviously, there's some cases where experience is necessary, but I do think that I've learned more, you can market yourself in a way that highlights what you do offer, even if you don't have that professional experience.
No, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really can. Like you were saying, it's just taking the time to learn a certain skill. Basically what I was saying earlier was, not to say you literally took the words out of my mouth, but no, it's just I was trying to get at that. I know I kind of went around it in a very odd way now, thinking back at what I said.
You walked around the entire thing.
No, but that's basically what I was trying to say. You could take the time to learn certain things in order to position yourself in the role that you want to be in, or in the career, or maybe the business that you want to create. I don't know. There's people out there that have that rather start their business around a certain thing that may not exist yet, or not to say that doesn't exist yet, but it's a market that's like growing, you know.
Yeah.
Like content creation a couple years ago, if you would have told somebody that, "Hey, I'm going to create a business around finding talent for, you know, that finding talented people to create content," and like that's a whole business now. There's multiple businesses. That's all they do is they find talent. Maybe it's in a general type of area or niche, and they help that talent grow, and whether it's getting them equipment, a team, whatever the case is, and boom, like it's a crazy business model, and it works, and and it continues to work.
You could like break that down too about like why it works, and I think that's a skill in itself, is seeing something for what it could be and like the potential, and like really learning why something is successful. Because the reason like that even works is because it's not just something like, oh, I'll do this and it's gonna work. No, there's probably a lot of research that goes into that. Like, this is why I know that this is gonna work in this direction. And also in the sense of like content creation, I think that this is always gonna be something. It may go in like different directions in the future, but I think it's always gonna be something that's relevant, because people want things to consume. They want shows to watch, even, or like podcasts, or, you know, I don't envision a time where people don't want to like either listen or watch content, you know. Especially when you think about like, for instance, I was telling you the other day that like when I work from home, you were asking me like what apps I use the most, and I was saying like, yes, you asked me how much I use YouTube. And I was like, well, I probably use it now more because I like to like listen to video podcasts, because even if I'm not like watching the video, I feel like when you glance over, you have a better feeling of like who's talking, and you get to know them a little bit more versus just listening to audio. I really enjoy video more than I do the audio. And yeah, I was like, I'm literally over like the past year, I've probably consumed more YouTube than I ever have, because I work from home and I like have to have something playing in the background when I work. That's the only way I can concentrate.
That's very interesting to hear that. I mean, so you're not the only one, because I've heard that plenty of times, that people that, I guess it depends on what you're doing, but yeah, for me, it's too distracting. I get too distracted by what's going on in the podcast or in the video, because it's more of a visual. I guess I consume more visually stimulating content versus, I mean, there's some audio stuff that I listen to, usually when I'm driving. So I guess there's that. But yeah, sorry.
But the second part of this, I wanted to get into like actually like navigating the workplace, because I feel like when you're young, and like in my situation, I work remotely. And like, so I don't have to navigate like an actual like in-person office, but I do have to navigate like what's professional and like what's not, and what can I say and what can I not. And I feel like the company I work at isn't like a super great like example of like corporate like world, because we're pretty like chill and lax, and we curse on meetings, not with clients, but like we curse on internal meetings, and we talk very candidly. And so I think that some offices you have to tread more lightly than others.
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, it depends on the culture, right?
Yeah. I don't think it's culture. I think it's more like, no, culture is more like, is different. Like, I think it's more like, you know, for instance, you work at a company with HR. We don't have HR.
Oh, okay. So, yeah.
So, like, you've got, like, there's things that, like, you know, for instance, like, HR would be looped in on. Yeah. And, like, I say we don't have HR. That's, like, a bad thing. But, no, we have, like, Mike, who's our CEO, and, like, we don't have, like, an internal HR. Mm-hmm. But, you know, there's some companies where, like, or, like, for instance, like, you have to wear business casual.
Oh, yeah,
you know, like, there's some companies where, like, they're in office and you can just as casual as you want, you know? And I think that that's, even just how you dress in the workplace is such an interesting thing to try to, like, navigate, like, what can I wear, what can I not? When I worked at my internship, we had to dress, like, kind of nice. And I always was wondering, like, is this too casual? Is this not? And it's such a silly thing, but it's, like, really, like, you think about it so much, because especially when you're starting your career, you want to present yourself in the best way possible. Yeah. So I think that's what's always at the back of my mind, is how I'm presenting myself to those that I work with, and how I'm presenting myself, for instance, to our clients. That's something that I feel like I've gotten better at over, like, time, because I've had experience. So, like, I've been like taking client meetings for like a year and a half now. So I feel like
Yeah.
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty confident. But I remember my first client meeting, like I was so scared and I talked so fast. I was like, my manager at the time, Douglas, was like, you need to like slow down. And I was just like, I'm just trying to get it out because I honestly don't even want to be talking right now. But now I feel comfortable and I feel confident in my role. And I think confidence has a lot to do with how you put yourself out there in the workplace.
I'd definitely say it's probably the biggest thing, if not the most important thing, when it comes to presenting yourself, not only in your workplace, but also in the world. You know, how you put yourself out there in a certain scenario, whether it's like a client meeting or you're meeting somebody new in your life or
But I
things
think it's
like that.
different in the workplace. Like I feel like
Oh, it is.
like in the workplace there are things you can and can't do. And like
Yeah.
for instance, if I'm meeting someone for the first time, like for one, like I'm not gonna be thinking. I mean, I'm probably gonna think about like, oh, am I wearing like what's okay? But like
Yeah.
you're not like for instance, if I like when I met you, I feel like we talked about like everything and anything, and obviously some things that I would have never said in like in a workplace setting.
Oh,
because
yeah.
you're not like there to share your life, you know.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's different because like you have to think about like what's something that can be discussed at work and when am I saying like too much, you know?
Yeah. There's I think there's boundaries that you're
Yeah,
talking about.
so there's boundaries in the workplace. And so like it's a lot different than navigating like a friendship or navigating like even just personal relationships because they're not so I feel like not a lot rides on those things. A lot can ride on like your career, you know,
Yeah, no, for sure.
like if you're like a girl boss like me. Like I'm trying to make sure my career is, you know, successful, so I'm always thinking about how I portray myself to the people that make the decisions, you know?
Yeah, and I think as long as you take it in a, you know, professional manner and you approach it in a professional way.
But I think that's what's confusing is that my professional might not be everyone's professional. It's the same. I feel like it's so subjective of like what's professional, what's not. Because for instance, like I email clients, right? And I'm always like rereading my emails before I send them to make sure like for one, there's no spelling errors, but also to make sure I didn't sound like too pushy or like all of these things, like you name it. But then like sometimes our clients will like email me and it's just like THX and then sent from my phone. Oh. And I'm just like, what? I'm like, okay, so like I can't do that because for one, like again, it goes back to being new in my career. I need to present myself as a professional. But like I always find it funny when I see like clients of mine like who like just kind of that's how they navigate like their workplace, and that's okay. Like it's not a bad thing at all, but it's interesting like from their career standpoint, not their career standpoint, but I guess from their company standpoint, but that's how they go about like communication, for instance. Because I'll be sitting here thinking like how to send this email, and then when I get the response, I'm like, what were the stakes that actually as high as I thought they were?
It's funny you say that though, because that's something that probably I mean I feel like I've always learned this, especially when it came to reaching out, for example, to a company to see if they would be willing to send me, even if it's just for they're not going to give me the product, right? Like on my YouTube channel, right? I would approach it in a professional manner. I wouldn't be like cocky and tell them like these things about my stats or whatever.
Yeah.
I would approach it like, hey, my name is X. This is what I do. I'd love to see if you have any gear, if you're ever willing to like just send out, and I'd obviously return it and do a review on it. I wouldn't approach it as in you need me and this is why. It was always more of I was always looking just to pitch and let them know what the value that I could add to their company or brand or product or whatever it was. So if anything I've learned more recently is it's making sure that your communication is like you said, from the grammar to making sure you're not coming across like a mean person, and also thinking about the person who's going to be reading this.
The person you got to think about, like you may have a certain intent, but like you always have to think about how it can be read by the other person, by the recipient. I think that's what makes things more complicated, is that having to think about that other person is like, oh, I had no malintent here and I thought this was fine. So that's what I'm always rereading my emails for too, is could this in any way be taken the wrong way? And most of the time, like 99% of the time, I'm fine. But it's just weird. It's a weird like fine line that you have to tread. And I honestly wouldn't have even known some of the things if I hadn't like worked where I do, because I mean, I've always considered myself a great communicator, but I wasn't looking for those things that someone might take out of context, or might not even take out of context, but like I didn't explain it well enough for them to understand.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's something that I think is just really interesting when you're navigating the workplace. And I think there's also like, I also question of like, for instance, like how much do you share like in the workplace? Like how vulnerable can you be? Because like, for instance, I'm someone who really values like empathy and vulnerability, and I want to be like my authentic self 100% of the time. So the idea of, there's that saying, I think you said it to me earlier this week, of like leaving things at the door.
Oh yeah.
It's very
yeah.
difficult. Like, how can you ask someone, like, for instance, to leave, like, if they're going through a really rough time, to leave it at the door? It's, like, not as easy as, like, shedding, like, a skin. Like, it's just not easy. And so I've always struggled with the idea that I can't be who I am where I work. And not because I don't feel like, for instance, where I work now, it's not because I feel like that way currently, but it's because there's just, being professional, and like somehow being vulnerable and professional doesn't correlate.
I don't think that's true though. I think it really does depend on. This is where just hear me out. This is where I think it depends on the culture and what it is that you are wanting to bring up at work in regards to what makes you you, right?
Yeah.
Because I think I'll give you an example. So like if you work in a place that values your, I don't know, something you love to do, right? It's maybe you work at a company and it's a rock climbing company, and you love rock climbing. Of course, your love of rock climbing is going to be brought about in where you work, because your company that you work for, maybe they make gear, and you're looking for insight, and you love telling the stories about like what, that passion that you have. So if that culture itself, the company culture itself, is allowing you to be who you are in regards to, your love of rock climbing in this example, then you can bring it about and talk about your experience as a rock climber. When you fell off a mountain and, like, I don't know, you survived and you put your little pad down. I just know a little bit about rock climbing.
But I feel like that's such a niche like situation.
No.
Because like, for instance,
no,
like,
but I'm using rock climbing as an example, but you can apply it to different things.
I don't think it does apply though, because I
think it does.
I don't think it does, because for instance, like, take me, like, to find like a perfect environment where I'm like, that like I have a lot of passions, for instance. It's not like realistic to say like I'd find an environment where I can truly like talk about everything, like.
I mean, yeah, because there's a lot of things that you like and whatnot, and yeah, I mean, yeah.
I just think like I feel like I'm not explaining this well. I just think that like, yeah, that's a very niche like example where it's like, yeah, if you love rock climbing and like you work at a place that's centered around rock climbing, obviously those
like
two
REI or something.
Yeah, but those two things are gonna be, obviously that's probably why you went there. But I think in like the world, I work in marketing, and I specifically in SEO, and I love SEO, but that's not my only like one love. I have many loves, and I'm a multi like faceted person, and I'm also very, I feel like, intricate in the sense that like there's so much more to me under the surface. And like I get like in a professional environment you can't always share like, for instance, what's going on in your life, or like, but I think sometimes I feel that I feel like if I shared more, people would understand more. Like, this is why I am this way. And I think because I always look for people to give people that understanding, that's why it gets difficult for me, because I just want people to understand like where I'm coming from, or like why I am the way I am, or, like, for instance, if I get emotional, why I'm that way. And because I'm like, I feel like if people had more understanding, like it would resolve a lot of issues,
No, of course. I mean, you can literally approach that into anything in life. If someone understood more about how, for example, this new podcaster thing we have, if you had no idea how to use it, you of course would have trouble with it. The same way that if someone didn't understand who you are and why you are, obviously there may be certain ways that people are approaching you as a person, what conversation wise, situations in your life the same way. But if they understood, oh, like that, okay, now I know how to better approach this person in a situation,
Yeah.
and things like that.
And I think that's what makes a workplace. I think that's what makes a workplace very like open. Is like always looking for that understanding with people. I feel like I try to be that person that I need, is like being always understanding of like what someone else is going through. Like I've always wanted to feel like understood. I know that was one of my big things when I worked at Target, is I felt like no one understood. Like I had great intentions and I was doing my best and that I wanted to be great. And like when people can't see like what you're seeing within yourself, it makes it even harder. Like you start to doubt yourself. Like I love to know that people see my potential because I see my potential, and you want people to believe in you. And I think it goes back to that too, is like you want people to understand and believe in you and be in your corner.
Yeah.
And I think that you can have that in a workplace and still maintain obviously a level of professionalism, but you can also deeply care about the people that you work with, deeply care that like they're not only just great workers but great people. Like I think the people we are outside of like work is important too. Like who like I don't know how to explain it. I just think that it's good to feel like you're not just a cog in the machine.
Yeah, and I mean, I think most people would appreciate that they're what they do for who they work for.
Thing that
It isn't. Yeah, it's they're more than just a part of, like you said, like cog in a machine.
They're more. Yeah, they're human,
it's true.
and there's like so many different interesting things. I think that's one thing that like I've loved about my company, is that we get to know like our team members, and like for instance, like I'm best friends with Alyssa, and I've gotten to know like all the things she likes, and even like when we have like our water cooler chats, I get to know like what people's interests are, and it inspires me that like we have this team of people that have so many different so many different interests that are vastly different than the work they do at this company, and I like that because it's like you're not only this one thing, you're like a plethora of things, you're not just tied to this one role. I don't know, it's really important to me like to see like who people are, and like to know that, I don't know, also know that they have other interests. And I mean, like I know, like, yeah, I just know that I've met so many cool people, and I think that's also what's made like the environment better, is knowing that these people have all these different parts of them.
Yeah.
And it's like you don't have to be one thing. You can be like a multitude of things. I don't have to be tied to just being an SEO. I'm much more than that.
Yeah.
As a person, I can bring much more value than that.
No, of course, yeah. I think we would all love that, especially if what you love to do at your place of work, you're extremely passionate about it. Of course, it'd be really good for everyone to understand how passionate you are about the other things in your life, because it could add value.
Yeah, I mean, I just think I like to be good. Like, for instance, I feel like I'm very good at what I do. I don't know everything about what I do, but I'm learning every day. I'm going to continue to learn in that specific area as well.
Yeah.
But I also like to make people aware, like, I'm also very capable of other things.
Yeah, of course.
This is not going to be the one thing that I'm good at. I'm good at a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I want to be great at a lot of things. So, like, yeah, I was like, I just think about that a lot. It's like, I know that, like, it's great to be good at this one thing, but I also want to know, like, I have value elsewhere too if you ever need me to add it somewhere else, I think that's more too of me wanting to grow, and like I feel like in order to grow you have to also, develop new skills and not just sit in this like one skill. And obviously you can continue to refine that skill and get better and better and better, but also try to like, what else can you pick up along the way?
Exactly.
So that's that. But something I also want to talk about, which I think is very like relevant to the workplace, is like being a woman in the workplace versus being like a man in the workplace.
Okay. I mean, okay. So what about it?
I think it's the reason I thought about this is actually because I've been listening to a Taylor Swift song recently. It's called The Man. And it basically, the song summed up is that like, if a man did the same things that in this instance Taylor Swift had done, people would be like you go man, like slapping him on the back, like saying he's doing a great job. But when a woman does it, like they see it differently. And I've noticed that too, like with when you're a woman, and for instance, if you're a woman and you're, very direct, it's seen as like bitchy. But if you're a man and you're seen as very direct, it's like, no, that's a great leader right there.
I mean, I don't think so, but maybe there is people out there that think that.
No, it's not that people think that. It's that people do. It's like people.
I mean, if you work for a company and your upper level management is consisted of females or males, but let's say they're a female and you're a male, of course the person that's working above you is going to be very direct, no matter what their gender is. In this case, a man or a female. So if someone sees the female as being, like you said this, not me, bitchy, then that's that person internalizing like something else that's not right, because that's kind of a messed up thing to say or think.
But the thing is, people do is like when I feel like I've seen that like play out is like when you do the same thing that a man does, it's like it's just seen differently. It's not the same because, and I think this does go back to like just the way things like history of like men like being the ones who like went to an office and worked, and women being at home. And like I feel like specifically, not necessarily like I don't think I feel like I experienced this in the work environment currently, but I feel like in life I've experienced like with me being more vocal, for instance, about the things that I want, and not willing to like keep my mouth shut at things bother me. I think people see me like as problematic because of that, versus like if I was a man doing that, like speaking up and letting like others know when things bothered me, it wouldn't be seen the same.
I mean, I think in this I don't know, at least in my opinion, it's more of like a perspective thing, because it depends. Like you said, it could be someone internalizing. In this case, like your example that you used was historical precedent of a man being in the workplace, right? I mean, I work for and around so many amazing smart women in the workplace, and they are it blows my mind every day. I'm like, what in the world? Like, you guys are doing this?
That's
this is
because
insane.
women run the world, man.
But the thing is, that's what I'm letting you know, and I work for them, and they're my managers or higher ups or leaders of the marketing team and all these other things. And for me, it's like, no, like I respect them. And
that's you. But I'm saying, I'm not asking if you do it. I'm telling you that
if
other people
do it.
Other people do.
I mean, I have heard stories.
Some people
and
have
like
real difficulty with working under like women specifically. Of like
that's a them problem, I guess. I don't
know.
No,
it is a them problem, but it doesn't like make it right. Of like. It's a them problem, but it is. But at the same time, it is like frustrating to be like, if I were literally a man telling you this, like someone like might feel differently towards it. I mean, I've known like yeah, I think it does happen, and I'm always cautious of like how I present myself, of like, for instance, not being over cocky or overconfident, like being humble, because you can sometimes, I guess, portray yourself as like someone who's not, when really that's not your intention, and like I just think that it does happen where women do have to kind of present themselves a different way, because if I were to like just be as direct, for instance, as like men are sometimes, they could be seen as mean or bitchy. I'm always like, that's what I'm always thinking, like, to be honest, because I've seen people experience that.
I can understand where you're coming from with that. That's the thing, is I get these, I don't know if you want to call it a stereotype or
it's not a stereotype.
Or whatever you want to call it. Because again, the job I have now wasn't the first time I worked for someone like a manager or upper level management who is mostly female. I remember back in my auto parts days, my retail automotive days, my manager was female, and I never thought of that, but I can probably see how some people could think of those types of things. But I think it's pretty cruel, messed up. I mean, I wouldn't want someone, even whether it's a man or a woman in the workplace, to think, that guy's a dick or whatever. It's like like, why is he being so mean, or whatever the case is. I think it can kind of go both ways, but I understand where you're coming from.
But the only reason I don't feel like it goes both ways is because I've rarely heard that like he like. I mean, I have also like had really great male leadership throughout my career of like they were great leaders in general, and I don't think their like gender had anything to do with it, but it's difficult like to lead in the same way. Like I feel I consider myself a really good leader, and like I've, you know, tried to continue to develop the skills that make for a good leader, but I always try to tread lightly of how type of leader I am, you know? Like I feel like, for instance, like me as a woman, the way I try to lead is I lead with empathy, and I try to be very understanding. I do try to obviously be stern and direct with like, who I need to be direct with, but I also like obviously I feel like I'm more cognizant of like who my audience is, like when I'm like instructing someone or like giving feedback.
Yeah.
I know that I think far more about it than a man probably does.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and not to say this is not to say like men lead terribly. I don't think they do. I don't think this is. I just think that it is like a problem that's arisen in the workplace before, where, you know, I don't even know how to describe it. It's so hard to describe it. I think it's just in the way that like people see women in general. I think that's what it has to do with of like how a woman should present themselves versus how a man should present themselves.
Yeah, if that's the case, then it's more of the one of the other parties has to humble themselves, I guess, in this case, right? Like to realize like, oh, you know, I should treat all people equally in the sense of, you know, like understanding and show empathy, be sympathetic, all these other things. I think it's a good thing for people to do that too, no matter who you're talking to, who it is that's your leader.
I think too something that's interesting, and this is just a me thing, and this is not like women across the board, is I am a very emotional person. Like I am very sensitive, and I always have been. And my mom, for instance, is the same way, and she was like, she has been in like leadership roles before, and she was like, I just couldn't do it because I like get so easily like frustrated and bothered, and like whether she was angry or like happy or upset, like the only like emotion like or the only like thing that would show is like tears. And that's kind of the same way that I've been trying to like not be, but I am, in the sense of like when I get overwhelmed or like when I get like really angry, the first thing that happens is like my eyes just water, and I'm like, why am I like this? And for a long time I thought that like this was a flaw, and that I could never be a great leader with the way that I felt emotions, because I feel like as a leader, the way leadership was always presented to me was that you don't show your emotions, that you don't present yourself that way. But I've also thought more about like what authentic leadership is, and I think authentic leadership is, you know, being who you are, leading in a manner that like resonates with others, like having that empathy, and also like showing that you have faults too. I know the greatest leaders I've worked with have done that, have showed me like, yeah, I'm not a perfect person either. I don't expect you to be, and have had that like understanding of like just what being a human is. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. The last kind of point I wanted to touch on was how to move your career forward. Like what can you do to like move forward in your career, especially when you're in your 20s? Because remember, we're talking about like you're in your last year of your 20s. I'm in about my mid-20s now, and how to navigate like and move your career forward. What do you think you should do if you're trying to like move your career forward?
I think if you're trying to move your career forward, take the opportunity to continue to always learn something, because there's always new things in pretty much in any field of work, whether it's engineering, you know, biomedical, marketing.
I feel
all
like
of that.
you present like the careers that you present as like biomedical or like engineering are such like old school careers of like what
I mean, there's still
they still exist. I'm not saying they don't exist, but I'm saying like now there's
for them too.
No, but traditionally I don't think more than half of Americans are like actually working those types of jobs.
Engineering?
Not in Bob, I'm talking
Medical
about like
field?
probably people in the medical field aren't watching our podcast right now.
I'm just saying. I don't know. Depending on what you're trying to actually do, I'm just trying to leave.
It's just like the examples that you give, or like the most like.
I'm just
if like okay. You know, it's those examples that like these were the careers. You can be one of these 5 careers.
No, I'm just naming a few. Those
I know, but
those are the first ones that come to my mind.
But why are they the first ones that come to your mind?
Because they're some of the most important ones.
They're the most important
Okay,
ones.
so having doctors, more or less doctors.
So, but not everyone wants to be a doctor.
I'm not saying
Everyone has accessibility to
I'm
be a
not
doctor.
saying that either. All I'm
Yeah, but
saying,
they're not the most important. I'd like to think what I do is a little bit important.
I think it's pretty important too. But I mean, in the sense of the medical industry, again, it depends on the industry.
I also doubt that there are any doctors watching your podcast.
I mean, all
right
I'm
now,
saying,
or future
can you let me
doctors.
finish? All I was trying to say was, if I can I'm trying to remember exactly what I was trying to say. It was just continue to find new things that are coming up about in the world that may help you be a better, become that person or that thing that you want to do in life. So, for example, one of the other examples I was going to lay out was coding. A lot of people think, oh, I have to go to coding school. And we literally had someone on this podcast, Stephanie, who broke it down for us and like, no, you don't. You can literally take up these different courses and learn. And that's what I was trying to say. Let me finish.
She didn't even take courses. She taught herself.
No, but that's what I'm saying is you can become a self-taught. Well, this is where
Open
I would
up
disagree.
your doctor's office.
I would only disagree. You can't do that. Maybe in a different country. Maybe you could become a self-taught doctor, like in some other country.
I'm gonna put that on my resume. I'm a self-taught doctor. No. I've got 20 seasons of Grey's Anatomy under my belt.
And engineering, that's the thing is, like engineering. That's what, again, biomedical engineering, all that stuff I really do. That's probably one of the only things for now, at least. I don't know. Maybe
that you need to go to school.
That you probably need to go to school for. Other things though. For marketing to business, like depending on the business you're trying to open up, to manufacturing, like there's so many different like ways that you can learn about that thing that you want to learn, and that's what I was trying to say. Yeah, but to take the time and learn that skill set. I'll give you an example. When straight out of high school, if for those of you that don't, I think we talked about it on the podcast before, is I wanted to create a bag company, and I did. I learned how to sew. I learned how to learn the processes of manufacturing. I learned how to prototype. I literally learned everything all on my own, and we did it. And that I got to that goal and did it. And that was something that was inconceivable back then. And now there's a lot of information online on YouTube and websites, blogs that can teach you how to get into the soft goods manufacturing. Now there's 3D printing. There's a whole industry of like, I can open up a 3D printing farm where I 3D print things. There's less
like barriers to entry.
There's it's insane. Like it's insane what information is available for someone out there on the internet to do now. Drop shipping, t-shirt printing, creating your own chocolate company, all of these things. The thing is,
I do think that back then there also like was opportunity. It just wasn't as easy. So it's like you've got to be someone who has a great amount of grit and determination. Yeah, and still today you do. Just because the information is out there, you still have to have a lot of determination to actually go out there, learn it, and figure it out. Because it's not all easy. Like at all. Like if you want to start a business, like sounds fun, but like there's a lot of things that you won't consider or like won't remember to like look into. So there's so many different aspects. So it does take a lot of like learning. There's definitely a lot more information out there, but even sometimes like, I work in SEO, so like I literally optimize articles for Google. Sometimes I'm Googling something that I'm interested in or like looking into, and the information, there's not great information out there too. You're also having to figure out like, is this the best information out there? Yeah. Is there something else I should know? Because sometimes it's only touching like the baseline. You've got to do a lot of research.
Yeah, of course.
I would say like something similar is like you have to be open to the opportunities that present themselves to you. I mean, opportunities don't come like all the time. They might. I mean, I feel like, for instance, like the whole reason we're here in Nashville is because this was an opportunity for Cesar to make a great stride in his career and like have like a good, have a career, like have a fulfilling career. And not that your YouTube isn't fulfilling, but to also learn and grow as a person. And I think that this opportunity will help with that. And the same thing like with where I'm at, like I've been working at Composely for like a year and a half now, and I'm so glad I took the opportunity because I'm better because of it. Yeah. I've learned so much, and not just, the thing is that I love so much is I've learned so much, not just about SEO, and I've had great success here, but I've learned like about how to run a business, how to scale products, how to do things that I wouldn't have learned if I didn't take this opportunity. And that's not even something that was in the job description. This wasn't even something that I would have even known that I was learning. And I was like, I'm so grateful. I knew in the back of my head when I decided to work at a startup that I'd probably, learn a lot more than what my job is. But I've learned, not just learned a lot, but I've had the opportunity to do a lot.
Yeah.
And like opportunity to do a lot of things that people don't do when they're 25 or 24. And, that's kind of crazy to me, is that when I think about what my job is and what I do and where my career is going, I think about how I never could have guessed I'd be here, but like in the best way of like, I could have never guessed that, I'd see the success I've saw and like be moving in the direction I actually wanted to move in, and, working with people that inspire me and keep me motivated, and like I in an environment where I know that like in order to continue to move forward, I have to grow. I have to learn. There's no two ways about it. If I stay the same, I'm not going to be successful. So I think that you also have to find those opportunities that will force you to do things that like you're not always motivated to do.
Or force you to do things that you're uncomfortable with
like
as well.
Force you to like ask the hard questions, force you to like do the hard tasks, because I think sometimes you don't think that you can do the hard things.
Yeah.
And that was like a lot of my imposter syndrome I had. It's like, can I actually do the hard things? Like I recently got a new role at my company, and it's like I've always been, an SEO and content project manager, leading like our kind of SEO service side of the business, and now like I'm having more of a focus on like building out this team, and still like working on the SEO side, but building out a team to help me, and also like to just make the business like better and to scale. And I think about how my first week, like when I was like, officially starting this new role, I was really scared, like shit, like I think a girl bossed her a little too close to the sun. Because like I was like, I know that like in my heart I know I can do this, but there was a part of me that like had a little bit of doubt of, like, am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Can I figure this out? And I think like the second day into the week, I just had a breakdown, because I'm like, I was feeling so like, I'm like, there's no way I can succeed. There's no way like I can do this.
You were doubting yourself a lot?
I was doubting myself so hardcore, because I'm also like someone who is like so hard on myself, and I get so like tired of feeling that way. So like it's just like that fatigue, like that exhaustion of like questioning myself is just exhausting. And and then I had a conversation with my like CEO, I think that night. Like he asked me if I was doing okay, and I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I was like, I am feeling like a little bit of imposter syndrome of like, I don't know if I like bit off more than I can chew, and like being honest with like how I felt. And like he said, like I think a couple days later, like we got into that meeting, and I was like checking in with him about like the status of things, and when he was like, why do you have imposter syndrome? Like, you're doing great. And I'm like, it's a common occurrence. Like I've had those conversations where I remember when I was at Target, and I had a terrible close, and it was when I was really new into like being a closing team lead. And I had come into the store like before one of my classes, because I worked the night shift, but I went into the store before one of my classes, and one of the leaders that was working was like, yeah, like this is what someone said about like the clothes, and it made me really upset. And I was like crying, and then I walked out of the store. And then when I came in later, my store director, who I love this man so dearly, because he believed in me, and also like he was my like biggest like motivator, and like just always picking me back up when I felt like I failed. But his name was Derek. He was our store director at the time, and he gets me in his office. I'm like, oh shit, like I'm in trouble. And he sits down. He was like, Sonny, I have a question for you. And I was like, okay. And he was like, why are you so damn hard on yourself? And I was like, just crying, like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know why I'm so hard on myself. And I think it's because I put this pressure on myself to, oh my God, I am crying. I put this pressure on myself to be like great 100% of the time, to be successful, because I'm thinking that's what everyone else expects of me. Everyone expects this from me, and I cannot let people down. And like I think that can be a great motivation of like people, like rooting for you to like come through with something, but it can also be such a like overwhelming feeling of not wanting to let people down, and like you start to like you can really get in your head, and I'm trying to be better about getting in my head.
About not getting in your head, you mean?
Yeah, about not getting in my head. But yeah, it's like there's that like imposter syndrome, and like, you know I can do a great job, and on those days I have to just tell myself like I can do hard things. I know I can do a great job. I was hired for this role not because of pure pity, but because they want me and they know that I can be successful. And I think that like that's, you just gotta remember that, which is hard. I think, yeah, I had be eager to grow and learn, like be curious. I think there's a scene in Ted Lasso that we should put in here where he's playing darts. I think it's in like, I don't know
Oh
if it's
yeah,
season one or
it's
two.
yeah.
He's playing
yeah,
darts
playing
with like
darts.
Rupert, and he's
probably
like,
one of the
no,
last
and he was
instances.
like, there's a quote by Walt Whitman, and I can't remember the quote, but he's like, basically it ends with like, be curious. He was like, if you were curious, you would have asked me, ever played darts before? And I would have told you, yeah, from the time I was 10, every Sunday till I was 16 with my dad before he passed. And like, if you'd known that, you probably wouldn't have challenged him to darts. And I think that that's a good representation, though, is that people aren't curious enough, like, to like ask the questions, or to, I think we also don't want to feel stupid when we ask questions. But I think you look dumb if you don't ask the questions and just assume that you can do it without asking.
Yeah.
And that's something I've learned way more as an adult, because when I was in school, I mean, I still do this, but I'm not as ashamed to ask questions now. But when I was in school, whenever I had a question, I would start with, this is a dumb question, but just because I was like, if it is a dumb question, I've acknowledged that
The
it's
thing
dumb.
is, I really don't think there is such thing as dumb questions.
Okay.
I always bring this
think
up.
there are.
I
am a full believer, and I think I have asked some dumb questions. The dumb questions are the ones that have been answered and you weren't listening. That's a dumb question. If you're in a room full of people in a meeting, and someone has said the answer to your question, it shows that you weren't listening.
I mean, I guess there's that example. You're
Yeah.
right, that's true.
So I try not to put myself in those situations. But like when I was in school, I'd always start with like, this may be a dumb question. And like in meetings, sometimes I'm like, hey, like I just want to clarify. Now I say I just want to clarify, but sometimes I will say this may be dumb, and then just because then you acknowledge that it could be dumb. But then that also, like, at the same time, it doesn't show confidence in my question. So, like, it's, like, a mixed thing. And then something I also wanted to touch on is specialization versus, like, generalization. Like, should you specialize in one thing or be great or good at a lot of things?
I'd say being good at a lot of things can get you through more doors, I guess you can say that.
The thing is, I don't think it can. I think, like, sometimes the way I see it is, like, you have like some of what we need, but we're looking for someone that checks all of these boxes.
So maybe more specialized in a role versus being more having more general knowledge of a certain field or industry.
That's what I'm saying, is I feel like sometimes you get like looked over because you haven't because you've been such a generalist that like you can fit into some of the boxes of a role, but because you don't fit into all of them, it gives you like a lower chance. And I'm not sure that this is true, but this is how I see it. But the thing is, I ask this because while I'm technically in a specialized role and I'm going to continue to learn SEO, I have this like I'm a multi-passionate person, and I would love to learn about other areas of marketing, and I would love to actually execute on other areas of marketing. But there are people, for instance, that specialize in like paid ads, and that's what they do, and they do that for their entire career. But the only thing, Nash is crying. The only thing that concerns me with that is that like, how do I grow? Like if all I ever do is this, how do I grow to like be, for instance, like if I want to be a CMO one day and I've been working in SEO, what skills do I have to be a CMO?
I mean, learning more general ideas about a certain industry. Yeah, but that's the thing
is like, but then like if you take a general role, do you like, I feel like there are far fewer general roles than there are like specialized roles.
Well, one example when it comes to like ads and like Google ads, that's a very like technical, and like to know what ad will do well, what makes an ad do well. Is it the ad itself, or is it how it's optimized in the back end, and how you're targeting, who you're targeting, the market, like what's the best like ROA, like all of these things, like in order for you to actually have a good ad and make money and hopefully make money for your business or whatever it is you're doing. So there's that whole thing. I know a little bit about. I've learned talking about general things. I remember learning a little bit about Google Ads. So, but that doesn't make me specialize in that role. If someone put me in that, I'd have to take a lot.
But the thing is, so like if you say you applied to a position to be like an ads like manager, they'd be like, well, you've only dabbled in it, and we're looking for someone
who
that
has like a
like,
lot of
who's
your
like
1 year
who's
experience.
been extensive in it. And I think that sometimes that's
Yeah.
difficult because like I think it's helpful to know a lot about a lot of things, like to be able to say like, hey, like, yeah, I know this, so I can take over on this like one project. But yeah, it's my constant like struggle of like, do I continue to specialize, or how do I, like, if I am going to specialize here, how do I gain experience in other places to be able to like think about the future of like, if I want to be a chief marketing officer, like, what do I do? You know, like, because that is like someone usually who's in charge of like an entire
department
team.
whole marketing team.
So how do I lead an entire marketing team when I don't understand some of the areas? Like, if I don't understand paid ads, how do I lead a team that does paid ads? And I'm assuming
finding a person to lead.
Well, I'm assuming that at that point, like, you know, as a good leader, you would like spend time with each team and understand their part of the business.
Yeah.
So it's probably possible, but I'm wondering like, how do you get there from like, you know, what kind of roles lead you there? You know?
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Those are really good questions.
Yeah.
They are.
Probably should ask someone on a podcast. Like, I should probably get like a CMO on here and be like, hey, like, but that's the other thing too. And like, we'll end with this, but like, I think people's career paths look so different that it's really hard to find like what will get you where you want to go.
Yeah.
Because I've known people that, like, for instance, Harlan, my buddy Harlan, he was an English teacher, and then he worked with us composedly doing SEO. Great at it, fantastic, and he learned quickly. He was very passionate about it, and he loved it. And now he's doing more of like talent and recruitment, and like so three very different roles. That's a really like interesting career path. But I also have no doubt that Harlan will get to where he wants to be. And like I have no doubt in my mind that I'll get to where I want to be. But I am always thinking about the best next steps and like what's the best thing for my career. And I think sometimes it's hard to determine what's the best thing for your career when like you feel so many steps behind from where you are, like where your future destination is. Like if I'm gonna be a CMO, I think I got a little bit of time. But I'm also someone that like wants to be there like tomorrow. Like
you're impatient.
Yeah.
You want things now.
I'm not impatient. I just think that like I have the determination and grit to figure it out.
I think you do too. Yeah.
So like that's what I'm saying. It goes back to the experience. Sometimes I feel like put me in a role and I will blow your socks off because I will not let myself fail.
I don't think you will either.
Exactly. So it's getting people to see that. And luckily I think I'm at a company that sees that like I'm not gonna let myself fail, and I don't think that like the people at the company I work with are gonna let me fail either. I think your career growth, I don't know if we answered any actual questions on this for people
No, I think we did.
Watching.
We did.
But I think career growth in your 20s can be so difficult to navigate.
Let's get this going.
Our dog is barking, so please just disregard. I think career growth in your 20s can be difficult because you're trying to figure out not just what you want to do, but like how you're going to get there. And you don't want to feel like you're too late to the game either, which I think you're never too late. I think that you can always be in a place to put yourself in a place to get you where you want to go. You've just got to make the next best step. And sometimes finding that best step is difficult, but not impossible. So you got to keep going, keep trying, keep learning. Be curious. That's been today's episode on career growth and navigating career growth in your 20s. Please like and subscribe to our channel. If you're watching on like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a review. It really does help us, and we want to continue to produce content that's relevant to you and what you want to hear. So if you can leave us some little notes, that would be helpful, even if they're not nice. I invite it. I do. But this has been Growing Together with me, Sonny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
We hope to see you again next week.
See you guys later.